Hey everybody, I am a solo artist that is touring Japan in October 2024, and I want to tell you the story of the worst day ever of my best trip ever. In my prior videos, I broke down the cost of my upcoming tour in Japan. I also talked about how I book gigs in Japan and the things you should expect when playing gigs there. Although I considered my first trip a success, I had a very rocky start. Before I tell you my cautionary tale, I want to cover some minor things that I learned that will make your trip a lot smoother. Also, at the end of the video, I will be telling you how you can participate in and support my upcoming trip to Japan. Download this picture. I kept a picture of Japanese coins and their values on my phone so that I would know how to pay for things in cash. However, here's a surprising tip about convenience stores. If you put a handful of change into the coin receptor, your change will come back in the largest denominations possible. There is a 10,000 yen limit, and it is rude to take up time when there's a line behind you, but you can get rid of all those 1 yen coins that way. I prefer to save my coins for street performers. Tips for traveling on the Shinkansen. Some trips between cities require a transfer. If you have to transfer trains, it's best to get to your platform as soon as possible so that you can stow your gear in the overhead compartment. That space can fill up quickly, especially during peak travel hours. Guitars will fit in the overhead compartment, but if you have larger items, you will want to reserve a seat in the back of the car. There is a space behind those seats where people store everything from luggage to bicycles. Those seats generally go first, so you need to make the reservation as soon as possible. The major JR stations have counters with workers that speak English who will help you make your seat reservations. You can also use a ticket machine if you feel brave, but I always go to the counter. In order to avoid making mistakes, I wrote my trip details on a notepad. I wanted them on paper and easily accessible so I could immediately read the info without fumbling with a phone. You will also have the information on your ticket. Make sure you know the platform number, the name of the line, what color is used for that line, and the time schedule. I can't stress enough how important it is to immediately head towards your next platform when changing trains. The overhead signs in the station and inside the car will display the information in both Japanese and English. There will also be announcements in Japanese and English. Once you go through the checklist, you can relax, but you have to pay attention to the time. That train is going to arrive on time, and it is going to leave on time. And you will be stuck trying to figure out how to get on the next train to your destination. Luckily, Shinkansen have bathrooms, so that won't be a priority at the station. I got on the wrong train during my trip from Tokyo to Hiroshima. I had a transfer in Okayama and got on what I thought was my train. Turns out that it was the same line, but my train was supposed to arrive a few minutes later. The train employee politely explained to me that I had to get off and board the next train on that line. I would only be able to sit in the non-reserved car, and I would not be guaranteed a seat if the train was full. Luckily, I was traveling during a slow period, so I made it to my destination relatively on time. Keeping your devices charged. Of all the small obstacles or inconveniences that you will encounter when visiting Japan, the one that will be the most frustrating is the lack of 3-prong outlets. Don't get me wrong, it's great that Japan has the same voltage as the outlets in the US, so you can plug into anything and feel safe. But God help you if you have a 3-prong plug for your laptop. There are lots of 2-prong and USB power outlets, even on the Shinkansen, but I only saw one 3-prong outlet during my entire visit to Japan. It was in the luggage storage area of the capsule hotel in Shinjuku and was clearly an area that used to house a fridge or freezer of some type. I have several of those gray ground plugs that I use to get rid of the hum when you plug your laptop into a PA. They convert the 3-prong to a 2-prong. From what my computer nerd friends tell me, You will not do any damage to your computer if you use a ground plug adapter for this situation. Please feel free to leave a comment if you have an opinion. The other thing you may want to bring is a plug-in adapter with multiple USB ports. You'd be surprised how fast you run out of charging ports at the hotel, and you only get one port at the capsule hotel. Also, I like to have at least one backup USB power supply to keep the batteries in my essential devices topped off. Other than the hotel, the Shinkansen is the best place to top off all your devices while you are sitting still. In my own personal case, I like to keep the backup power supply plugged into my internet hotspot when I'm traveling outside the hotel. Hotspots usually have a very long battery life, but I wanted to make sure that it always had a maximum charge just in case of an emergency. The next was my phone because it's my GPS, translator, and access to my social media. Luckily, I don't spend a lot of time on the phone, but I like to have the GPS on when traveling. I have anxiety and occasionally need to make sure that I am following the correct route. Speaking of GPS, here are some other things that I learned while in Japan. First is that most of us have used Google Maps when driving, but not walking. If you have never used the app while walking, then you're in for a bit of a learning curve. My issue with using Google Maps for walking is that your dot can drift off the path even when standing still. Intersections are the worst, and you sometimes have to walk in the wrong direction for about 30 seconds before you figure out that you're going the wrong way. In Shinjuku, I often found myself retracing my steps many times in different directions until I figured out which way to go. This brings me to the worst day of the best trip I've ever had in my life. I had just arrived at the Narita airport and was in line at the JR Pass office when I realized that I had forgotten the vouchers for my pass as well as my hotspot. I had all of my receipts and confirmation numbers, but I left the physical vouchers in my desk back in Texas. Without the physical vouchers, I had to buy a new JR Pass. I went to a separate kiosk to rent a new hotspot. I paid for both of them with a credit card. From there, it was time to get a Suica card. A Suica card is an electronic method of payment that works at train stations, convenience stores, and most places where tourists spend money. You tap it like a credit card and it subtracts the amount of purchase from your total. You can top off the card throughout your trip. I inserted my credit card into the Suica machine and it asked me for a PIN. This is where my problems really started to multiply. I have never been in a situation where I was asked to provide a PIN using a credit card and I didn't even know there was one, let alone what my actual PIN was. My debit card uses a PIN when I get cash from an ATM, so I reached for that, only to discover that my debit card was in the same spot as my JR vouchers, which was in my desk back in Texas. Not only do I have to use my credit card to load up a Suica, but I also needed to get cash. All I had on me was about $25, so I changed it over to yen at the window in the airport. I tried dialing all the 800 numbers on the back of my credit card, but I couldn't get a call to go through because my phone wouldn't dial out. I tried using a payphone, but I didn't understand how to make it work, so I just gave up. It had been 4 hours since I landed, and I finally decided to pay for a bus ticket to Tokyo Station, then take a train to my hotel in Shinjuku. Narita Airport is farther away from Tokyo than Haneda, so the bus ticket cost about $25. It seems that my credit card still worked when purchasing things like bus tickets and convenience store items, as well as the hotel desk, so I wasn't completely screwed. I had more than enough cash to buy a train ticket from Tokyo Station to Shinjuku Station, the busiest train station in the world. I made it to Shinjuku Station while watching my progress the whole time on Google Maps. Think that things can't get any worse? Well, guess again. Remember how I remarked that most people have never used Google Maps while walking? I am one of those people, and my inexperience was about to multiply my anxiety and exhaustion. I passed the street where I was supposed to turn and kept walking. The blue dot kept drifting and the arrow pointed up. I didn't realize that the arrow was pointing north. Instead, I thought it was pointing in the direction of where I was supposed to go. It was a good 20 minutes before I realized that I had been walking in the wrong direction. What tipped me off was that I started to notice my trip time was going up instead of down. I had to retrace my steps for a good 20 minutes before I recognized a video advertisement in a shop window that I had passed on my way over. Think it can't get any worse? Well, think again. In my research for the trip, I estimated that I would do a minimal amount of walking to my hotel, so my baggage was a backpack and a duffel bag. I didn't think I needed a rolling suitcase because most of my duffel bag was filled with my minimalist wardrobe and the t-shirts I intended to give away, making the bag relatively light. I was too cheap to go buy a rolling suitcase and I paid for it in pain. I was walking around lost in Shinjuku in mid-September where it was still hot and incredibly muggy. Not only that, but I was wearing the sweatpants that I wore on the overly air-conditioned airplane. Luckily, I had bought a big bottle of water before I made the trip because I was drenched in sweat by the time I finally made it to the hotel. I was greeted by concerned looks on the faces of the desk staff who asked me if I needed a doctor. I assured them that I was just exhausted and frustrated. Luckily, my credit card worked at the desk to finalize my reservation at the hotel. I stored my gear in my locker, found my capsule, and then headed for the onsen for a soak before bed. Checkout was at 10 a.m. and I had to get out of the capsule hotel because they cleaned the entire facility. I had to figure out what to do for the next 4 hours, so I got something to eat and walked around Shinjuku to unwind for a bit. My next priority was to contact the credit card company while sitting in front of the entrance to the capsule hotel. To make things worse, the website wouldn't let me log in because I was in a different country. To make things even worse, the only way to get it fixed was to call a number based in Japan. My phone wasn't working and I still couldn't figure out how to use a payphone. The hotel reopened and I went back to the lounge where I kept working on my issues. By the evening, I still hadn't worked out my credit card issues, but I did get advice on how to fix my phone issues. A friend suggested to me that I use the internet calling feature on my phone. I had no idea there was an internet calling feature on my phone, but I pressed it and it worked. I called my family and let them know what was going on. I also called the various numbers listed on the card and the number on the website when I tried to log in. None of them worked and there was no live chat or email available. It was time to get some sleep and work on the problem the next day. On the third day, I was looking up numbers when I saw an 800 number labeled customer service for my credit card company on Google search. I dialed the number and I can't tell you the elation I felt when it started ringing and someone actually picked up. The customer service rep told me that it was a good thing that I called because they had sent messages to me about suspicious activity on my card. After the obligatory security questions, I was told that my credit card was scheduled to be suspended in a few hours and that I called just in time. I got access to the website, established a PIN, and then I went to the 7-Eleven to use my credit card to get cash. I bought some food, went back to the hotel to eat, relax, and get into the onsen. The rest of my trip was amazing. So here's the list of the things I learned from this trip. Number 1, make sure you have every document ready for your trip a few days before you leave and run through your checklist several times. 2, make sure you know the PIN to your credit card and ask customer service how to sign into the website if you get locked out in a foreign country. 3, learn how to use Google Maps when walking. 4, learn about using the Wi-Fi calling option on your phone. 5, don't be a cheap ass and buy yourself a rolling suitcase. These experiences helped me to gain the confidence to return to Japan for 3 weeks in October and November. If you want to participate in my upcoming tour, you can support me by joining my Patreon or by buying a The Ramone t-shirt. You will receive exclusive content from my upcoming tour to Japan. You'll find a link to my Patreon and how to buy the Ramone t-shirt in the description below. Thanks for watching and thanks for your support. I'm Rocky the Ramone. If you want to participate in my upcoming tour, you can support me by joining my Patreon or by buying a The Ramone t-shirt. You will receive exclusive content from my upcoming tour to Japan. You'll find a link to my Patreon and how to buy the Ramone t-shirt in the description below. Thanks for watching and thanks for your support. I'm Rocky the Ramone.